Hey guys, welcome back. ThyrixSyx here. As I said in the last video, I did film 2 videos today. I will be putting up my Death and Taxes from Modern deck soon, after I get my Wastelands, Rashadan, Ports, and Caracases. I will also be putting up my Legacy Death and Taxes deck, and then I'll be putting up a proxied Vintage Death and Taxes with some help from ZachSellsMagic. Go check out their channel, by the way. It's great stuff, great Magic commentary. It's fun. It's not super serious, and that's why I like it. I will be putting up the vintage deck, as I said, and it's called Thalia's Thrashes with Trashes, or something like that. I'm still working on it a little bit. So without further ado, here's the Death and Taxes. Okay, guys. So here's my Modern Death and Taxes deck. The reason I'm playing this deck is because I really like taxing. It's very fun. It's not too mean, although there can be some games where it's just you get the nut draw and your opponent essentially can't do anything. That can lead to the feel bad sometimes, but other than that, it's a really fun deck to play. Another reason I'm playing is because Thalia, Guardian of Thurban, is literally my favorite creature, and actually my favorite card ever printed. And if I could, if it was legal, I'd be playing my second favorite card, which is Stoneforge Mystic, but that card is super broken. So we'll start off with the creatures. I play 4 Judges Familiar. Oh, I should mention that this is a mono-white Death and Taxes deck. Now, there is a very well-established green-white Hate Bears deck, but I currently don't run that because I really like playing the mono-white deck. It has a little bit more tricks to it. There's a little more ETB abilities, and I haven't really just sat down to see if I would like the green splash more. So until I really do that, I'm gonna keep this mono white. I really like how it is. So I'm playing 4 Judge Familiar. I have the shiny, pretty promo version, and I won these. Well, I think I won 3 out of 4 of them. I really like this card. It's a Curse Catcher without the creature type, but it does have flying, which is an advantage, especially in this deck. I feel like in the modern format, flying is really good. You can get past Tarmogoyfs on the ground and stuff like that. I really like this because this deck uses Aether Vial, and with Aether Vial at 1, this can come out of nowhere and counter your opponent's random spell. This card, in conjunction with the next creature, Thalia, is a really, really great way to stall out opponents who use a lot of instant sorceries. This is great for blue-white-red control. It's great for Scapeshift decks, and it can even start hurting the Tron decks, depending on which version of Tron you're playing against. I play 3 Thalia's main board because I don't want to play 4. I do have the 4th one in the sideboard, but I don't want to see too many of them against a lot of decks. I'll bring in the 4th one if it's against a matchup where I think she's better than a different card in the deck. But other than that, she is a legend, and I don't want to have essentially a dead card in my hand. She is a 2/1 first striker, which means she kills a lot of things on the ground. The creatures in this deck are very good at making your opponent do things they don't want to do. A lot of decks in Modern are unfair in that they do really crazy things, and this deck makes them play your game. This is similar to the Death and Taxes deck in Legacy. This is similar to a deck in Vintage that I kind of play. I still don't have all the power cards yet, but it's essentially the same deck. It's a mono-white deny strategy, which makes people do fair things in an otherwise unfair format. Next, I have 4 Leonin Arbiter, and this card really feeds off of all of the land search, all the fetches, all of the random things that make people search their library. This card is great, especially in conjunction with Ghost Quarter, as well as Path to Exile. It makes Path to Exile just a strictly better card than a lot of other exiling spells. And if nothing else, he is just a bear. Now, his ability can hurt you if you are playing a splash version with fetch lands to get the extra color. And that's why a lot of lists that do have a different color don't play him, because they would rather have the mana consistency than the ability to do the fun tricks. His ability does stack, so if you have multiple, they do help you out a little bit. Him in conjunction with Aven Mind Sensor which has flash, so there's also the surprise factor. Just makes your opponent's mana searching so much harder. This thing can surprise block. It can just come out of nowhere so that your opponent, if they decide to Wrath, you can get this end of turn to have a beater to put out. It's a very good card. If you get your opponent once, it's really great. Now, I'm running one Aven Riftwatcher main deck and two Kitchen Finks main deck, as well as one Aven Riftwatcher on the sideboard. The reason I'm doing the split like this is because I believe Kitchen Finks is better against a lot of the creature decks in that it can persist, it will gain you some good life, and it's a 3 power instead of a 3 power instead of 3 toughness. Now, the reason I do like Riftwatcher is that it can get in the air if the ground is too gummed up. And if I find I'm in a matchup where the ground gets way gummed, then I just bring in another one. I usually don't side out a Kitchen Finks. I'll usually side out a card that's a little more dead against like an actual creature matchup, like the Aven Mind Sensors. So I really like it. Riftwatcher's a little bit better for gaining life in that if you flicker it, you'll get it from when it leaves play and comes back in and then leaves again. Whereas Kitchen Finks, you'll only gain it if it enters the battlefield. So they each have their merits. This one also you can cast off 1 white. They're both castable off, or not castable, but put into playable with Aether Vial on 3. So next up, a spot which not many people run, or not a spot, a card that people don't usually run in the spot. A lot of the times people will run Mirror Crusaders. I am not running the Super Sword package that some people do in Mono White Death and Taxes. Instead, I'm going for as much abusable flickering as I can. So I decided to go with 4 Blade Splisters. I really like First Strike on the creatures, especially because they're colorless. A lot of cards with protection just can't deal with them. If you need, your Blade Splister can just be a chump blocker, and you can flicker it for a lot more Golem tokens. It's a really great card. And if you are playing Death and Taxes and you have Mirror Crusader in the spot, at least try it out. You might find that you like it more. Flickerwisp is essentially the reason to play this deck. There are so many tricks with this guy, I'm not even going to go through them all. Just know that this is the cornerstone of the deck. Now, a lot of people only run 3, which I think is a mistake. Even if you're not running a flicker or a bounce-heavy version, I think this card is just really good. It removes opponents' blockers. It can reset things that they have that like need counters on them or something like that. It's a really, really good card. As such, I'm playing 4. It also is just a 3/1 guy in the air, which is, as I said, really great because a lot of decks can't stop anything in the air, and any removal that could kill this guy would kill this guy anyway. So the fact that he has one toughness doesn't really matter. Now, a recent addition I made was to add 2 Restoration Angels to my main deck. I was finding that a lot of matchups, at least F&M matchups, ended with my opponent casting something that I couldn't deal with outside of a Path to Exile. So Restoration Angel is kind of there to make sure that I have the larger creatures to deal with any weird creature that comes out. Now, of course, it's still only a 3/4, but it is able to block X3s, which against my deck are pretty good. The Blaze Buster tokens can help, but having 4 toughness really helps against decks with creatures power 3 and creatures toughness 3. So it also has flash. It's surprise. Woo! Onto the non-creatures. As you can see, there's a lot of creatures in the deck. That is because the deck runs 4 Aether Vials, But the deck also runs 4 Path to Exiles. Now, this is just good card to deal with creatures. There's not much to say about it except for the fact that the clause that they can search their library for a card, a land card, doesn't really matter when you have Leonin Arbiter and or Aven Mind Center. So, as I said, the deck runs 4 Aether Vials. This helps against the control matchups that use counter magic. You can get through. It helps surprise people. It acts as a mana ramp in a way in that you can cast multiple spells a turn where you wouldn't usually be able to. Some decks are turning away from the Aether Vials, which is fine, but the fact that I want to be doing a lot of stuff on my turn, or not on my turn, but a lot of stuff, makes me want to keep these in. Another addition that I haven't really been able to test too much is Mask of Memory. This deck is essentially a white weenie strategy. It's not actually. Like, this deck really wants to gum up the game. It, in my opinion, is a little bit more of a mid-range type deck. The Legacy style is blatantly a control deck. But it is essentially just white dudes. So you can run out of gas very quickly. And when you do, it's a little hard to get back into the game. So I decided to run Mask of Memory. Now, you can also run Sword of Fire and Ice. That'll get you there. Anything, really, that can give you card advantage is very important. And I run just 2 slots because that's really all you need. If you see it, it will help you. If not, if you see it when you don't need it, it's a little bumming. That's why I only run 2. Onto the lands. As I said, we play 4 Ghost Quarters. This is because denying any deck of a very important color or combination of colors, this can keep blue or red control off of Cryptic Command. This can just blow up things like Celestial Colonnade. It's very important to have, and the fact that we have Search Hate allows us to more readily control the disadvantage that is intrinsic with this card. His less important brother, Tech Edge, I'm currently playing as 3 of. I used to have 4, but I found too often that I was running out of white sources to cast my spells, as a lot of my spells do need double white, or just if I want to cast multiple spells, then I'll have to have like multiple white open. And I didn't want too many lands that are going to go in my graveyard essentially immediately, so I chopped it down to 3. Nowhere near as good as Ghost Quarter in this deck, but they still get the job done. I'm also playing 16 lands in the deck. There not too many lands are needed, as this is a small deck with a small curve, so 16 planes is really all I need. And I'm running the John Avon art, not the full art, because those are all in my EDH deck. So, yeah. Moving on to one of my favorite parts about this deck, the sideboard. The thing about Hate Bears' sideboard, especially mono white Death and Taxes, is that there are so many good hate cards out there. There aren't as much as I would have liked nowadays, as cards like Boil and things like that. They're not very friendly to new players, but whatever. So I have 2 Aethersworn Canonists. These are great for the control matchup. They're great for any aggro matchup that isn't Affinity. And they're great against the Storm matchup. Now, Storm matchup, obviously, you're not going to see too often. But if you do see it, it's a great card to bring in. If nothing else, it's just a Hate Bear. So, you know, Hate Bears. Hate Bears are awesome. As I said before, the 4th Thalia, she comes in against Infect, because she also comes in against Infect. Can only play 1 pump spell. She comes in against Infect for much the same reason Aethersworn Canonist does. She slows them down a lot, and the first strike allows her to threaten to trade a little bit better than any of the other creatures I have. Spellskites come in against any deck with a lot of removal, any deck that runs enchantments. So if you go against the Boggle deck, this is really good. It also can come in against the Infect deck, as using pumps on Spellskite not nearly as good as using pumps on your Infector. It's also 0/4, so it blocks really nice. Spellskite's one of my favorite cards. Phyrexian of Revoker is a card that I don't often bring in, but it's just a card that can help me out if there's ever a card that I don't see coming. It doesn't hit lands, which is a little upsetting, but it is a guy. Now, some people would play Pithing Needle over this, but I prefer the fact that I can vial this in. It's a 2/1 guy who can get in there. I really like this card. It's just a card to make sure I'm not surprised by anything. Now, for my graveyard hate, I have a Grafdigger's Cage and Rest in Peace. The reason I'm not doing 2 of either of them is that they can do different things. Grafdigger's Cage, for example, is really good for Meliropod, proactively and reactively. It can make it so that their persist doesn't happen, but it can also just make sure that stuff doesn't come in from the battlefield for them. Rest in Peace is a little bit better against any graveyard-based decks, and both of them are good against Snapcaster Shenanigans. I'm currently running 2 Stony Silence as my main my main hedge against the affinity decks. I'm not sure if I would rather have Kataki, but what I think I might do is do a 1-1 split, and when I draw them, just see which I like better. But for right now, Stony Silence does enough that I think it's a decent spot here. It shuts off some of their artifact lands. It shuts off their cranial plating, their that Steel Shaper guy gives +1/+1 counters. I have a Singleton Ghostly Prison because as most of the modern I play is at an FNM, I'd probably exchange this for an Oblivion Ring as another hedge against a card I'm just not expecting. But as I play this deck mostly at modern FNMs, it's better just to have against random creature decks that aren't necessarily tier 1, so they don't have like the fetch lands and stuff. So this will allow me to play against normal fair decks, but slow them down to the point where my cards are just better. As I said, I had the second Aven Reflector in the sideboard. It just comes in if I need more health. So, as I said, I am playing in a FNM environment, so burn is a large thing. So I have 2 core Firewalkers. It helps against other decks, Storm being one of them. So it's not necessarily a dead card. I'd probably still remove it for something else. I'm not sure which. If I ever went to a real modern tournament with this deck, and if it's one of the first cards I would remove from the sideboard if I did go green-white. So, and then 3 Golem tokens just for Blaze Splicer shenanigans.
Alright, so as you can see here, I'm shite with transitions. I went straight from the recorded video to now this voiceover narration. So here you can see the deck laid out, and here I'm just gonna talk a little bit about some of the changes if I were to splash a color. Now, all the colors, blue, black, red, and green, are viable as splash options. However, green is probably the best, followed by black, red, and then blue. Now, the reason I say blue is the worst is that all they really have is Vendilion Click. Vendilion Click is a great card by itself. It is similar to Flicker Wisp in that it's an evasive flyer that does things. However, it also has flash, so it can be surprised. But the reason it's so good is that it can really mess with your opponent's hand, furthering our whole game plan of screwing your opponent. Other than Vendilion Click, however, there aren't too many things. And of course, Vendilion Click is a legendary creature, so that makes multiple copies not as good, which means you'll only be running a couple of the blue cards, which means the blue splash overall isn't too worth it. Now, if I were to add that, it's possible that you can add in counter spells as well, but then you really start to change up what the deck is doing, and you turn it from a kind of taxing mid-range deck that's really based on creatures into a bad control deck, really. And adding blue for counter spells or any sort of like Azorius Charm or disruption things will really make a lot of your cards worse. Now, if I were theoretically to add Vendilion Click, it would most likely be in the Blade Splicer spot. That's hard for me to say. Deal with it. Mainly because it is a 3 power body. I don't want to remove my Flicker Wisp or my Resto Angels because with Vendilion Click I can get more value using those on Vendilion Click. But as I said, it's not too worth it to run the blue splash. As for the red splash, there is the jump in probability of use is pretty high. Blue is terrible in my opinion, but red is decent. Red does have Magus of the Moon, which is a Blood Moon effect. Now, you could just run Blood Moon, but there are a couple problems with that. One, this is a creature deck that does win by just getting in with small beats with your dudes, so you'll want the Magus to be able to hit. You are running Aether Vial, so you'll be able to get it in there at end of turn or when someone like fetches for a Shockland or something like that. So you do have some slight surprise factor, and you can make it essentially uncounterable. But also, using Blood Moon instead of Magus of the Moon makes your Thalia worse. Well, it doesn't make your Thalia worse. It makes the Blood Moon effect worse. you'll definitely not want to have turn 2 Thalia, and then your plan on being turn 3 Blood Moon. So Magus of the Moon's really good there. As we said, this deck hates a lot on land bases, and as land bases are super insane right now, Magus of the Moon could really hurt a lot of decks. Now you might be thinking, well, yeah, of course it could hurt ours as well. It will shut off your Ghost Quarters. You'd be taking out your tech edges because they're just not as good. Having Ghost Quarter as a 4 is still completely fine in a red splash with a Magus of the Moon, because the times when you don't have Magus of the Moon, you definitely want to still be on the plan of making sure their game plan is slowed down by taxing them a little bit, shutting them off their colors that they need, all that, and Ghost Quarters is the best at doing that. So you'll definitely want to keep in Ghost Quarters, and with Magus of the Moon, you want all of your basic lands to produce white, because as soon as he comes out, all your non-basics are going to produce red, and only red, so those are the only cards that you need to have produce red. And as I said, a lot of the people who run the splash versions, they get rid of the Leonin Arbiters and they run fetch lands. But you don't really have to do that. It'll only be a 2-color deck. You can run the Lorwyn filter land. You can run the obviously the Shock land and the Check land, Cliff Tree and Sacred Foundry, and the Rugged Prairie, I believe is the name. And those will work completely fine. That'll fix the mana enough, and as soon as Magus of the Moon comes down, all your planes will still be planes, and all of the lands you use for red mana will still be red mana. So he's really good in that regard. Another card that I would like to play in the deck, just because, well, it's one of my favorite planeswalkers, is Ajani Vengeance. Ajani Vengeance, once again, really good at slowing your opponent down at their game plan. The problem is that he costs 5 with Thalia. Now, you won't often get to a point where that's an issue, but the games it does come up, you'll be a little sad. So you'd only want to run him as like a 2-0. But he'd be very good. The problem with Thalia then is that running red, you'll be very tempted to run Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix. And now I'm not saying that's wrong. Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix, very powerful cards. They're played for a very good reason. So my suggestion would be to have Thalia's move to the sideboard. That or just don't play Lightning Bolts and Lightning Helixes. But I think Bolts and Helixes are fine. Possibly only the Bolts. Helixes 2 mana, you don't really need the Lifegain that much. But what I would do is I would take out the Restoration Angels for the Ajani Vengeance. I would take out probably the Blade Splicers for the Magus of the Moon. I probably wouldn't run 4. I'd probably just run a 3. That'd probably be fine. The Blade Splicer can turn into an additional copy of whatever else you want. And I'd probably just add 3 Lightning Bolts, taking out the Thalias and putting them on the sideboard. Red doesn't offer terribly too much in the way of sideboard material, but that's fine. The Magus of the Moon really is the entire reason you want to be playing red. That with the Lightning Bolts added removal, since sometimes Path isn't the only way you can deal with cards. Since Path is your only removal spell, you want more, and I think Lightning Bolt does a really good job of that. Onto the Black Splash. The Black Splash is very nice because it helps one of the problems with Death and Taxes in that you can run out of gas. My problem with the Black Splash is that because of the specific card you're going to want, it's going to cost you a bit of money. And I don't want to spend any money. Well, I don't want to spend Bob money. It's Bob, alright? Freaking Bob. He would be fantastic in this type of deck, but he costs so damn much. Essentially, where you'll want Bob is like 3 or 4. Probably 4. It's Bob. You'll take out the Mask of Memories. You have Bob. You don't need that card advantage. It's coming from Bob. Deal with it. You'll probably take out like Resto Angel. In this build, it's not going to be too needing to have that high end if you're just pumping out as much things as you can. You'll definitely want Tide Hollow Sculler, excuse me, and Sin Collector. Those 2 cards are fantastic. They are really good at eating your opponent's hand, stopping their game plan even more. While you're attacking their lands, you're attacking their hand, you're attacking the spells that they can cast that you've allowed them to keep. It's really great. Now, obviously, Bob, I told you where to take out. The Tidehollow Scholars can go in the place of, I want to say the Judge Familiar. I do like the Judge Familiar. But like a lot of the other ones, I would replace the Blade Splashers probably first, because they're the things that are kind of the aggressive part, but as long as you're drawing a lot more cards than your opponent, you'll be able to deal with the aggressiveness by having those extra guys on board. So Tidehollow Scholar and Sin Collector probably would be in place of Blade Splicer, and I guess the Judge Familiar, but going turn 1 Judge Familiar into turn 2 Tidehollow Scholar is pretty decent. You'll probably end up wanting to play the full set of Tidehollow and Sin Collector, but I can see running 3 of each, as sometimes they will whiff. Like Sin Collector is not as good against like an affinity deck, so you'll not necessarily want to see all of them. The best thing about Bob, as I said earlier, is just the fact that he can really get this deck out of not having anything. The deck's main problem, I think, from my time running it. Now I'm no expert. There are plenty of people who have played this deck a lot longer than I have, who have evolved it over time, seen it change. But I believe that the biggest problem with this deck is running out of gas, and Bob really solves that problem. And that's why I would like to do the Black Splash, but I'm not gonna buy that stuff. It's too expensive, damn it. On to the very much loved Green Splash. The Green Splash, I guess technically there's also just like Green-White Hate Bears, which is like that's like the line of what is Green-White Hate Bears and what is Death and Taxes with a splash. The cards for green are just like Voice of Resurgence, Scavenging Ooze, Khazali Pride Mage, Wiltleaf Liege is another one, but I feel like that's definitely more for the Green-White Hate Bears list. I'm not a big fan of Wiltleaf Liege, and Lifegain Spider is definitely just Green-White Hate Bears territory. Now, I should just get out there that I do not currently play or keep up with too much the Green-White list. So the things I'm about to say, take them with a grain of salt. There are people who play Green-White Death and Taxes. They know the deck. They like the deck. That's fine. I'm going to try to explain it so that if you're interested in Death and Taxes and you would like to have green, then you have some idea of where to start. Scavenging Ooze is very good as a card in Modern because of all the Deathrite shenanigans, because of what little graveyard deck there might be, and the Snapcaster shenanigans. It's a decent addition. Now, I'm not sure where I would put it if I were to go that route. Once again, the axe, the first 8 places to get the axe would be the Restoration Angels, the Mask of Memories, and the Blade Splicers. So I could see that I probably would not play more than 2. I would never want to see too many of them, as I feel against too many decks they would do nothing. They're only seemingly good against the matchups where they're using the graveyard or they are a creature deck. So they'd be dead like against a Kiki Twin, not the pod version, but Kiki Twin, Scape Shift, I believe, different varying combo decks, and just kind of other mid-range normal style decks. Voice of Resurgence is a card that I think is just very good, and I would see myself playing 4 of them. It's very expensive as a card currently, sort of, kind of, depending on your budget. But I do have 2 of them. I would probably play 4 or 3, depending on like where I could fit them in. And as I said, the first 8 slots would be taken up by the 8 cards I previously said. But Voice Resurgence is very good against many decks. It's good against the control decks. It's good against the decks that want to wrath you with the that card that I forgot its name. It's a red card, does stuff. I'll put it on the screen. So I really like that card. It's a really good hate bear in that your opponents aren't going to want to cast spells on your turn, and they're not going to want to kill it. This deck can get to a really nice critical mass of creatures, and then you can just beat in with that. It's very good. Kazali Pride Mage, I believe, is often played in the sideboard. Sometimes people will play it main if there's a good reason to. The Exalted trigger is fine and all, but often you'll want to get in with multiple creatures, multiple flying creatures. So I'm not entirely sure its utility. It's definitely good against artifact enchantments. I'm not gonna argue that point. I'm just saying. I believe some lists also do run in the 1-drop slots Dryad Militant and or Noble Hierarch. I can see merit to that, being that you can get your turn 3 plays sooner. But I personally am not a fan of Noble Hierarch or Dryad Militant. Now Dryad Militant is fine. It can proactively stop those Snapcaster Mage shenanigans and things like that. It's fine, but I personally prefer my Judge's Familiars. I like being able to force my opponents to play differently, force them to think whether or not the spell they're about to cast is worth it to me to counter, or if it's worth the damage. So that's just my opinion on the main deck cards. Now there are some mono white cards that could potentially be in my main deck. There is Mangara Corondor, who was played in the Legacy version, but in Modern he's a little too slow without Caracas. He doesn't do as much as you'd want. You have to have Violon 3 to be able to use it with Flicker Wisp, or you have to have 4 lands to Restoration Angel it. I can't words, bear with me, once again, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I don't like to sleep, and apparently I hate my brain. So there's that. There's also the fact that you could be running a different suite of swords. As I mentioned earlier, Mean Crusader is a thing that a lot of people do enjoy, and that would take the place of Blade Splicer. Now, some lists run Mean Crusader as well as Hero Bladehold. In the Restoration Angel Mask of Memory slot, I believe they usually run 4 of them. I don't much like that. It's a very aggressive card, I think, which is the reason I don't like it in Death and Taxes. I think all of my aggressive cards I want to have flicker effects, and all of my cards that are taxing. I want a lot of taxing cards, and then my aggressive cards I want to be able to abuse. So it does have its merit. It is a very aggressive card. It's a very strong card. It can win you games on its own. Like if you just recover from a board wipe, it can win you the game. But as a high end, I would rather have Restoration Angel to blink. It also is flying. I can get it with Massive Memory, things like that. So there's just those things to consider when you're deciding whether or not you want to play Death and Taxes. Whoa, transitions! I'm bad at them. Deal with it. Anyway, moving on. So I'm gonna talk very briefly about the lands, the potential lands, I should say. So in the mono white version, I'm currently running no Horizon Canopies. That is not because I don't want to. That is because I don't have any. They're not an expensive land by any means, but they're not something that I need exactly. Horizon Canopy is a very good card to add if you. It's good to gain you some good old fashioned cards, and that's really what it's used for. The life loss shouldn't matter. You have 3 main deck cards that will gain you some life. It's totally fine. The fact that it draws you a card is really what's important. Some people play a one of the Ganjo Castle. I don't see too much of the point. If Dahlia's gonna die, she's gonna die. There's very little you can do about it. It stops her from a Pyroclasm. Forgot the card name earlier. I remembered it. It does stop her dying from a Pyroclasm, which against Death and Taxes is very real thing in the green red Tron matchup. But usually she'll make it cost more, and then you'll have Judge Familiar. So it'll cost them 4 to deal 2 damage to everyone. It's a little bit of a trade-off. I think having a Horizon Canopy is totally fine. How the hell did I get on that subject? Oh, right, the life gain. Yeah, I think the life loss is totally fine for being able to draw a card. Now in the that is not at all what I was talking about. I was talking about, I just totally losing my mind right now. I'm going completely insane. Anyway, as I said, when you're doing splashes, you'll usually want the filter land, the shock lands, and the check lands. Those are usually what you want. Specifically for the green edition, you can run Stirring Wildwood, but then you kind of get into green white hate bears. As I said, there's a very fine line between green white hate bears and Death and Taxes. There's also a deck I believe called Alexis and Taxes, which is just the two decks mashed together, which is weird, but whatever. I don't judge. More decks the better. Yeah, Stirring Wildwood is a very good card. It doesn't take. I'd like to point out that I say things are very good cards. I say I digress. I pause. My apologies. I also do random shit in the middle of videos, but deal with it! Because this is my channel and I suck at it. Anyway, it's a man land, doesn't cost too much to activate. It's pretty decent, gets in there, has reach, you know. It's fine. If you need a man land, if you feel like you need extra beaters, it's totally good. In any of them, including the mono white, you can run Muda Vaults. Muda Vaults, totally fine to run. It's a man land if you feel like you need them. You will get first strike if you have a Blade Splicer out, which, you know, that's not inconsequential. First strike is very good in the modern format. First strike and flying, really good. Very, very good mechanics, and I like them. Dolly is awesome. Lands, you need them. Don't play without lands, or you'll be mana screwed every game because you don't have lands. Play with damn lands in your deck. What the fuck are you doing? Anyway. The sideboard, where I love to live. Sideboarding, one of the hardest things to do in Magic, in my opinion, but probably one of the best, the greatest show of whether or not you're a good Magic player. There are a couple things in the mono white sideboard that you could possibly use that I'm not running. Leonin Relic Warder is one of them. If you're going against a artifact or enchantment heavy deck, or like you can bring this in against Twin if you want to. It's not necessarily the best against Twin because they'll just kill you at instant speed. But you can also just bring this against Affinity. It'll only hit one of them. That's generally why I don't use it. But it's still decent. Of course, I'd bring it in against like Stony Silence. It'll get rid of your Birthing Pods. It'll get rid of stuff like that. It's fine. There's also Fiend Hunter, which can come in against creature decks, and you probably want to take out like the Aven Roofwatch or something like that. You definitely don't want to run too many of them, as and in my opinion, they aren't too awesome. You can do tricks with them, and that's important. You can do tricks with Leon and Relic Warder, but they're okay. As for blue, don't play blue in taxes. Don't play wet taxes. Nobody wants wet tax money. It's bad. The red version, you can bring in Boros Charm. I've not done extensive research. It's like a 45, 50-minute YouTube video. I'm not going to go into super duper detail. I don't want you to net deck. I want you to take this idea and I want you to shape it, make it your own. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, red, you can have Boros Charm on the sideboard, which I think is totally fine. This deck, I cannot say enough, is a creature deck. If you didn't get that by the amount of creatures we ran, I don't know what video you were watching. Boros Charm really helps against the Pyroclasm decks, helps against the Supreme Verdict decks. Heck, it even just it helps killing them, and it helps making getting those last 4 damage in. I think it's a totally fine option. The only problem is it competes with Thalia, which is always awkward, but they're both such good cards that you kind of just you're gonna have to play them together, and you're gonna be okay doing it. It's not gonna be optimal necessarily, but you'll be all right. You'll win the match, and you'll be happy. As for black, you could run Thoughtseize, but wait, don't. You have Tidehollow Scholar and Sin Collector. in my opinion, there's no reason. I do see some people who run black and taxes, or legitimate death and taxes. Um, they will have the Thoughtseize, and I guess it's okay. I don't like Thoughtseize because one, it costs a lot of money. Two, you lose life, which of course not too much of a problem. But that, in conjunction with the good old-fashioned Bob, will stack. But my main concern with it is that you will be running Sin Collector, you will be running Tide Hollow Scholar, so I don't feel like you need that much hand hate. And Orzhov Charm, not very good. I can't think of too many black things you want on the sideboard, but as I said, I didn't do super duper research on putting black in because I don't plan on putting black in. There are probably some good cards. Dismember is probably one of them. You can just add to your removal suite, and it can cost you 4 life and 1 mana or 2 Thalia, or you can actually pay the cost. That's why I'm saying Dismember. Technically, Dismember can be a mono white card, but it's definitely a lot better in the black splash since you can cast it and not lose life. As for the green splash, you have, as I said before, Kazali Pride Mage, probably in the slot where Stone Silence is. You can get rid of their stuff, whatever. You also have access to things like Obstinate Baloth, which will help in the any like Jund matchup, I guess, if you're facing off too many Lilianas. But I feel like there aren't enough green sideboard cards. There probably are, and as I said, I don't play the green white list, and I don't pretend to think I'm an expert at Death and Taxes, although I do play it in 3 formats. Just saying. And yeah, I think green is a fine way to go. Personally, I like the red option because Johnny and red's cool, but green's fine. Don't do blue. If you do black, if you have Bobs, do black. You'll probably really like it. Yeah. I don't have an actual end screen. That's too awkward. So yeah, guys, just tell me what you thought about the video. Tell me if I can improve. Obviously, I can improve by not talking like a stupid person, and I can probably get the video quality to a little bit better next time. It was very hot. Can't do many things with all the air conditioning and things off because it is sweltering. And as always, I don't know how to end videos.